Hello, and welcome to the We're Not Stumped Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Boland, and I'm a congenital amputee of the right hand. In this show, I will interview other amputees and allow them to tell you their incredible life stories. I'll also feature family members of amputees and others who support the amputee community, all in an effort to discuss the challenges and triumphs of those living with limb loss. So stick around and listen to inspirational stories and find out why we say, we're not stumped. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the We're Not Stumped Podcast. I'm Mike Boland, and today we have Christine Caron on as our guest. Christine is a survivor in the true sense of the word. She's a mother of four, an advocate, and a motivational speaker. Like me, she's an amputee, but unlike me, she's a multiple amputee, and she was not born as an amputee. There's so much to Christine and her story, and that's why we're here today. So Christine, thank you for being a guest on the We're Not Stumped Podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Mike.
Oh, it's a pleasure. You know, we always like to start the podcast with a in your own words segment. So, Christine, if you don't mind, we certainly like to hear your story.
Well, my story started in 2013, or this chapter of my story started in 2013. I hadn't been feeling my best that year. I think I'd been fighting bronchitis and a few other things. And on a Thursday afternoon, my pool was being opened. I'm from Canada, by the way. And so the pool was being open and I was playing with my dogs outside. And we were playing tug of war when one accidentally nipped my left hand. It wasn't aggressive. There was no blood. It was just a skin break. And I immediately put my hand in the pool because anybody who's opened a pool knows there are chemicals in that sucker.
Yeah.
So I did that first and we continued our game. But then when I went inside, I washed it again and I polysporined and did the disinfecting and then polysporined. And I didn't think about it again because I did not have any pain for days. Like I didn't have any pain from my hand. Flash forward to the Monday, I'm at work. I come back to my desk and I realize that my drink from this morning is still sitting on my desk and that this was the first time that I had been to the bathroom all day. So at work on Monday. And I hadn't been feeling great, right? So I had a doctor's appointment scheduled for that day. And it was like as soon as I noticed this, that I hadn't had anything to drink or use the washroom, my doctor's office called and canceled my doctor's appointment. They had a medical emergency in the office, or something, but they were in essence canceling my appointment and said, if you're really sick, go to emergency. And in my head, I was like, I'm not that sick. I'm not feeling that bad at this point. Tuesday morning, I was a runner, by the way. I used to run every day, and I used to do a 5K on Saturdays. So I had done that on the Saturday. And Tuesday, I barely made it around my block, and I was winded and dizzy. And so I walked the rest of the block, and I was in a foul mood. And I took a shower and I felt a lot better. But I got to work and I was speaking to one of my coworkers. And honest to God, it's like somebody punched me in the stomach. I became winded. And I said to her, I have to go home now. I really feel like shit. That I'm quoting myself.
That's fine.
There's a lot of places go, well, could you use another word? That's what I said in my office. And I honestly just picked my stuff up and left. And it took me 6 months to actually remember that. I didn't remember anything from Tuesday.
Wow.
For 6 months.
Wow.
I woke up. Well, I remembered little tiny bits, but not... I went home. I was sitting at the lights, actually, which would have been a crossroads. And I thought, do I go to the hospital? And I thought, no. And this is one of the first signs that I wasn't thinking properly. The reason I didn't want to go to the hospital was because my car would be stuck in the parking lot if I had to be admitted.
Wow.
There's some good reasoning, right? I mean, really. And I laughed a few years because I'd been reading an article a few months earlier about a woman having a heart attack and that she couldn't go to the hospital until her laundry was folded. And I thought to myself, what?
Yeah.
You're having a heart attack. Yeah. Well, I'm worried about leaving my car in the wrong parking lot. This isn't much better, right?
Yeah.
Anyhow, so I go home and I go to lie down in bed. And this is another sign. I thought, if I died, it would take them hours to find me. And this wasn't a comedian thing. Like, you know, how we say, I wish I would die, or, you know, when you're feeling really bad. But I honestly, this was serious. I thought it'd take them hours before they found me dead up here. Yeah. Thinking or knowing that you're going to die is a sign of sepsis.
Wow.
It's not a question. It's I know this is going to happen.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So I lay on the couch, but I didn't know any of these signs, right?
Yeah.
So when you retrospect is always 2020, as they say.
Yep.
So I lay on the couch at about 2:30 in the afternoon. My youngest son came in and woke me up to tell me I was breathing funny. I told him, yeah, no, I'm fine, whatever, and rolled over and slept till 8:30.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. And I wasn't woken. I wasn't. Anyway, I went to the after hours clinic, and they were closed. The website said they were open till 9, and they were closed. And then I went home. But the friend said they would drive me to the hospital, but an 8-hour wait just didn't. It killed me. It was actually draining me to think about an 8-hour wait. So I said, you know, I'll go home and sleep, and I'll go first thing in the morning. Well, I'm lucky because a lot of people don't get up the next morning.
Wow.
But for myself, I woke up at about 11:30 at night, and I had flu symptoms. So I was sick probably till about 3 a.m. And then I didn't sleep. I lay in bed. I contemplated calling an ambulance. But again, I thought, I can't even stand up for longer than 2 minutes. I can't have them come to the door. They'll wake up my kids. So I waited until morning. So at 7 a.m., I walked into the emergency room. I told the security guard, if I pass out, tell them I think I have pneumonia. So I got to the admitting nurse, or the nurse at the emergency. I handed her my health card and passed out.
Wow.
And I came to for a couple of seconds, enough to tell them that I couldn't feel my hands and feet.
Wow.
And then I woke up a month later.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I woke up in a different hospital. And I had no recollection. I remembered going to the long-term care. And I remembered going up the stairs to my bedroom. But I had no recollection of anything for a good 6 months post. So I woke up a month later. I should have been in my bed. So that my brain crashed. She asked me, did I know what day it was? I still had the day I went at the 21st.
Wow.
Because it would have been the night before. Then 22nd, and then the 23rd, and then I guessed up to the 24th. And then she told me it was the 13th of June.
What, a month and a half later, you're saying? Wow.
Yeah, a month later.
Wow.
It was just under a month later, because I went in on the 22nd of May, and I was woken. I'm pretty sure it was the 13th of June. I'd have to look at my stuff, but.
Wow. Yeah. You know, it's interesting as you speak, what you were talking about was you're a runner and you're running 5Ks. Suddenly you can't stand for 2 minutes. And I think that kind of, you're talking about, you know, your mental state because of what you were going through. I think that speaks a lot to it, if I'm not mistaken. Is that one of the things with sepsis that you should be looking for?
Yes, the mental state is huge.
Yeah.
People aren't making sense. I have a couple that I spoke to that they were in the emergency room, and the nurse asked him a question, and he started telling her about a knife he bought that afternoon. And I guess the nurse looked at the wife and went, "Is this normal?" And she said, "Absolutely not." And then he started to decline quickly.
Oh, wow.
And that is what happened to me. I started to decline so quickly after I started showing the mental side of it. And when they woke me up, one of the main things they were looking for was severe brain damage, because I had been ventilated that whole time. And after a week of ventilation, there's some damage that starts to happen to the body and break down. And one of the issues is some brain issues. They were quite shocked that I remembered the date. They remembered that I should have been in bed and what hospital I was headed for. Wow. So that was very exciting for them, but I had no clue what was going on. And I looked over, and there was my daughter. And because they said they wanted to see if I would recognize her. And I said, "That's my Kika." And she went, "Yoda." No, it wasn't Yoda. It was guy was the ring chest.
I wouldn't be able to help. Yeah.
The rings.
Yeah.
Gollum. Anyhow, she goes, "My God, you sound like Gollum."
Wow.
So that's her first words to me after a month, that I sounded like Gollum, and I still kind of do. I've got a deeper voice than my sons and most men in my life. So this is the results of life support being rammed through your vocal box.
Oh wow! I can only imagine.
I used to be able to sing, and I can't hold that. I have a lot of control over my vocal box.
Well, you sound fine today, and thank you for being
thank
on
you.
here.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
but
and
I do, but I can't.
I also wanted to thank you too, because I didn't say this in the lead-in, but I knew from talking to you and reading about you that your journey was from sepsis. I didn't want to bring that up because I knew that's part of your journey, but I wanted to thank you for being on today, because it is still September right now, and September is Sepsis Awareness Month. And yes. I know you're an advocate and you speak a lot to it. So again, thank you for taking the time in a busy time in your life. But is there anything you'd like to speak to with sepsis awareness that, I'd love to hear from you?
Well, I just want people to know that any infection can lead to sepsis. And today with antibiotic resistance, it's really more important than ever to get your infections under control. There's none of this waiting for the infection to pass anymore. When we were younger, you could sit out a sinus infection. Yeah, I'll just wait for it to pass. It'll cause a bit of damage, but whatever. I know a lot of young men who, especially men, who will wait for a dental infection to pass or wait until it turns into an abscess. In today's day and age, that abscess is going septic really fast. And any infection, a dental abscess. Did you know that you could get a strep infection could enter your body through an open wound?
No, I did not.
And a lot of people think that they're feeling better after a couple of days on antibiotics, and they go back to work or send their kids back to school. But in fact, they're still infectious. And you can go septic this way because a strep infection doesn't cure itself. It needs antibiotics. There's just any infection, whether it's viral, whether it is bacterial, fungal, or parasitical. I'm not sure, but those four can go septic in today's day and age.
Wow.
And they do. And some takes a little longer than others, but a flu in young children goes septic. It turns septic very quickly.
I did not know that. Wow, that's very good information to share. So thank you so much.
There are signs.
Yeah.
There are signs to look for. If your child has the flu and their fever is broken, but they actually look worse than they did when they had fever, you want to look for some of these signs, and one of them would be a dry diaper.
Oh,
If your
interesting.
child or family member has not used the washroom or has had a dry diaper for over 4 hours, this indicates that there's some kidney malfunction going on. And this
Interesting.
is a sign of sepsis. This is a sign that your infection, which could be a viral infection from the flu,
Mm-hmm.
is turning septic. A lot of the parents who had children that went septic said the fever broke, but the child looked worse.
Hmm.
So that's one of the signs for a child. I had a child that went septic. They never used the word sepsis when she went septic. This was 30 years ago.
Wow.
But she was like a rag doll. And my instincts were screaming at me to get her into the hospital.
Wow.
And everybody I spoke to said, well, she has the flu. Of course she's sick.
Yeah.
But my instincts were going insane.
Mm-hmm.
And we brought her in, and we lived in a small town at the time. And they looked at her, and she was admitted immediately and put
Wow.
on an IV. They never uttered the word septic, ever. We never heard it. But now, knowing what I know, that's what happened. Now, her fever hadn't broken. But in a lot of cases, the fever breaks, and people think, well, if there's no fever, it can't be sepsis. A lot of people
Yep.
that even know about sepsis, you do not need to have fever to be going septic. You need to have signs such as the child looks like a rag doll. In an adult, you have extreme muscle and joint pain, often a stomach pain.
And
You
those
have
are you brought that up, right? You know, you
yeah,
brought up your stomach, and then you also brought up the fact that you weren't able to stand. And well, that's
no, and that
yeah,
made me dizzy. I couldn't, and I felt like I was going to pass out. But that's extreme. A lot of people can't catch their breath, and
wow.
their heart is going 100 miles an hour. I suspect that was going on, but
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
aware of it. And maybe that's why I couldn't stand up.
Yes.
You know,
Wow.
a baby grunts. A baby will sit there and
Interesting.
they just grunt. So the
Interesting.
parent is going like, what's going on? Like,
Yeah.
what's going on? And the baby can't tell you, but a baby, one of the signs with children is grunting.
Well, that's good to know.
And
Thank you
any
for passing
ICU
that along.
professional will tell you that. If the baby starts to grunt, you want to be looking into that.
Wow.
Disoriented or confused.
Yeah.
That was the other one. But that's also a sign of stroke. So,
Mm.
but this is associated to infection. But
Mm-hmm.
if the person has infection and is showing signs of stroke, go with infection. Tell the doctor, there is an infection. My father has gout in his hand. Gout is an infection. And the doctors often will mistake gout, somebody collapsing from a gout infection, turning septic, for a stroke. It's crazy, but it happens a lot. And you need to advocate for your family member. If there is an infection that you know about, that the doctor does not, you need to advocate. Because often, and this is where we lose patients, they're treated for stroke. They will develop a cytokine storm, which is blood clots,
Wow.
which makes it look a little bit more like stroke. But they'll find out in an autopsy that the patient had an infection and they went septic. So
Interesting.
you need to know the signs.
Absolutely. And you know, you said something too that I'm starting to get a lot more involved in the amputee community, at least. You brought up advocate and advocating for yourself, and I've learned that that's important, certainly with what you're talking about. But even and now that
Today,
you know, yeah, and now that you've gone through, and we'll have to get into that. You know, some of the drastic measures they took to save your life, but now you're wearing prosthetics. And one of the things that I've learned through other people getting prosthetics is how you have to advocate for yourself to make sure that you're getting the proper fitment, the proper care, all of that. So thank you for bringing up the advocacy and the self-advocacy. That's very important.
well, and I want to talk about amputees and a septic amputee. A traumatic amputee loses a limb, and they have some risks, you know, of infection when they're healing,
Sure.
and they suffer every risks like other amputees.
Sure.
A septic amputee, for the first year, is at risk of a heart attack and stroke.
Wow.
Can die from an infection on their residual limb.
I didn't know that. Wow.
So if they're not fitted properly and they keep having infections, that infection could kill a septic survivor. I had a twin while I was in the hospital, a male amputee, and I am so grateful for him. And apparently he feels the same for me. I'm sorry it happened to him.
Sure.
And he's sorry it happened to me, but we're so grateful that we could start this journey together.
Yes.
In rehab. We have the same, the damage I sustained from sepsis was I have kidneys that function at 35 and 50%. I have permanent lung damage. My vocal cords will be damaged forever. I'm always at high risk of any infection that I get. I'm at high risk of it turning septic faster than the average. I risk a shortened life expectancy. The research only brings me to 10 years, which I am approaching now, which scares the daylights out of me.
Sure.
Because I'm approaching a big
milestone, right?
Milestone.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of research past it. I know there are survivors past it.
Sure.
But not at my level. Not at my level of damage.
Got it.
I know there are survivors that passed it, but not people that have the same level of physical damage that I sustained. So we touched on my organ damage. I lost both of my legs below the knees. I lost my left arm below the elbow. And I lost all of the tips of my fingers on, I don't know, can you see my hand?
Yes.
So my hand is severely damaged. I have a skin graft in there so that I could widen it because it was really tight. The scar tissue in my palm before the skin graft, and one of the scars on the side of my hand literally pulled my fingers out of the sockets.
Oh, wow. Nice.
So I don't know if you can imagine that pain.
No. It's
worse. And they tried to put them back, and once they're pulled out, they can't be put back unless they're put in with nails, or they call them pins. But I can paint with what I have right now, and I can use a pen, and I'm afraid that the pins will make me not be able to do that. And this is an outlet for survival for me.
Sure.
So until I can't hold a paintbrush, I'm not going to do pens in my hand. But they qualify me as a quad amputee because I don't have much use of my right hand other than, and to me, that makes me a triple amputee because I could pick up this cup. You see, I could pick it up.
Yeah.
Because I don't have a pincher.
Okay.
Like many do, but I don't have that because my thumb was taken too short. So this little bit of function for me is a lifeline.
Oh, I can imagine.
As an artist.
Sure.
Because that was huge. It took me 2 years to be able to hold the paintbrush. I worked real hard at it. And a pen, and to do some art. I paint Christmas balls.
Oh, that's neat. Do you ever post those on your social media and your Facebook?
Do. I can send you some pictures.
I'd love to see it. Yeah, because I've looked quite a bit on your posting, and I hadn't seen that yet. But that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I started putting them up because I didn't think there was much interest in them.
Oh, I bet there'd be a lot of interest.
People started ordering them.
Yes.
So it was it was pretty exciting.
That is really
it's an
neat.
outlet for me. I like doing that stuff. But I have to tell you, in my recovery, I identified more as an amputee than I did as a sepsis survivor because I didn't, in the beginning, understand what post-sepsis syndrome was. So I have to say I did this drift over, and I did this like a drift. I sort of pulled myself away from the sepsis groups for a little while. Because until I started meeting other amputees that were sepsis related amputees,
Sure.
which I started meeting in the amputee groups.
Got
Right.
it. Yeah, makes sense.
So that opened up my world. And I started doing so much research as soon as I got out of the hospital, because I heard the word sepsis twice.
Before
And
or during?
I kept it during.
Wow.
And but no information on it. And my bestie that I started to tell you about in rehab suffered 2 strokes while we were in there. And I couldn't, like, I was terrified because we're twins, right? We have, we're Mutt and Jeff. And, you know, like our doctor was calling it, you know, names like this, and it was really fun. But this really scared me. And I didn't suffer a stroke or any heart ailments, but a lot of post-sepsis survivors do. And they're at risk for that for the first year, at high risk for 120 days post-discharge. And I sent you a document connecting COVID to sepsis. Yes. And I'm going to say that explains the unexplained deaths, sudden deaths that are happening to COVID patients post-COVID.
Yeah, that's
it's
interesting.
A risk, and it's been a known risk. It's a known risk for sepsis survivors for a while. The World Sepsis Group, or the Global Sepsis Team, I believe in January 2022, or is it 2021, put out a paper on that risk.
Wow. Because
they saw the connection of COVID and sepsis, and they were trying to get the risk factor out, the recovery information out.
Yes.
Because survival is only the beginning of this show.
And really, thank you for sending over. You sent me over a lot of infographics and things. And for the people that are watching on the YouTube channel, I'm going to incorporate. They're going to be incorporated into the podcast. So if you're listening on a podcast, please come over to the YouTube channel and take a look. You know, you had said something earlier too about the lack of research 10 years out. And I want to go to something that, you know, you had passed along to me, and I want to ask you some questions about that. I learned that you're heavily involved in the Sepsis Research panel in Canada and some other groups internationally. So you're going to be part of what the solution is, or part of that research probably moving forward. Is that something that you can speak to?
I so hope I'm part of that, and that we find something to stop this, and or anything to have better outcomes for survivors. In my pre-life, pre-sepsis, I had 20 years at Canada's National Research Council.
Wow.
And they have a research network across Canada that does research, everything from genetics to computers to everything. It was that was my dream job, being connected to that research and that network. And when I became sick, and I started trying to, I'm not a researcher myself, so I don't have the credentials, but I was trying to get, I was part of a group that a friend of mine in Halifax and I founded Canada's first sepsis support team.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's a Facebook group, and it's private, but this was a place that sepsis survivors could connect privately. And I started documenting everybody's symptoms. I have got a document that I know you researchers want. So you're just going to have to connect with me, and I will share it. But I have been collecting for 5 years, and
Wow.
I've up to probably 3,000 sepsis patients that I've spoken with.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I think so. And but I need to be able to put it together in a document that doctors understand and research understand, because they speak their own language, right?
Yeah, I was saying, you need to make it that easy. you need to make it. You need to, put it at a different level. I'm kidding, of course.
They have legalese, they have medicalese. I know they do. I lived in the hospital industry for a while.
Yes.
So I know they've got codes. So so it was really important to me, because when I was in the hospital, all the words we heard was rare, 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 rare. She's the sickest person in the hospital. And these are lines that every single sepsis patient has heard, and families. Yeah. So this is code. They're taught to say these things. And as with the internet, we are realizing that it's not rare. It's not rare. And why has there not been any research on it? People die. 11 million people die every year.
Wow.
And that was before COVID.
Wow.
And it disables millions of others every year. So why has there not been any research done on this? I'm not going to go into that. But
you know what I'll say this, what you're doing though is making sure that there is going to be research into that. And I think that's extremely important, and great job on doing that.
Thank you. The Sepsis Alliance out of the United States actually saved my life.
Interesting.
Because when I came out of hospital, I was foggy. I didn't know what the heck was going on. I was losing thought mid-sentence. I connected with their web person because I worked at a research network. I kind of like, forget this, help people, go straight to the web person. Anyhow, she sent me information. I started speaking publicly. They were sending me information that I could use and slides that I could use. They helped me develop an elevator speech.
Wow. That's
on
great.
Sepsis, because you and I were talking about the speech you want to give.
Yes.
So and an elevator speech was in marketing. That's one of the keys. You got 10 minutes to tell me what you do. And they helped me develop that.
That's great.
Because I would do a speech on, people didn't want to hear about sepsis. They wanted to hear about my journey. But at the end of my speeches, bam, I'm hitting you with sepsis and I'm going to show you the signs. And then I open up a conversation with my crowd that I am speaking to. And it is amazing where the conversation goes. Yes. Sometimes it goes to medical. Sometimes it goes to signs. Sometimes it doesn't. It goes to just adapting.
Yes.
But the audience can take it wherever. I was speaking in Halifax and I had an EMT and a sepsis survivor in the audience. And those two people took that conversation places that I just couldn't have done by myself. And that was one of the best, for myself, conversations. We got press on it. I think that people left that speech elated and informed. And even the EMT, she was going back to speak to her preceptor, who was all about sepsis. And they just energized each other, these two people, and me, because this sepsis survivor is full-bodied. And I'm sorry, she said that I was one of her heroes. Well, by the end of this speak, she was one of my heroes, because this woman suffers post-sepsis syndrome, facets of it that I don't suffer, and that I am seeing, and that I started to see when I started. This is the woman I teamed up with.
Wow.
And we developed that group that I was telling you about, because she inspired me.
I'll tell you though, and I'm sure the listeners are going to feel the same way. As you speak, you have so much passion in your voice, and you're so educated on all of what you're talking about that, without your genesis of having that speech, I'm sure those people wouldn't have come together. So your passion shines through, and you're doing a lot of great things. So thank you to you for what you're doing.
Thank you. But you got to talk. When I get talking, sometimes I forget where I'm going. So please bring me back.
No, you're doing fantastic. No, not at all. I mean, I'm learning so much. And one of the things, even though we've been corresponding and have had some conversations now, that I didn't share with you, I wanted to share while we were speaking, but my dad had a UTI infection that turned into sepsis, and he was in a coma for a week, and when he came out, unfortunately, it was never the same. So, that's why as I sit and listen to you, and as you speak and talk, and I get to learn, it's amazing sepsis affects a lot of people, and it affected me. And unfortunately, my dad was never the same after that. So it's good to be able to connect with you on that level.
I have to tell you, a UTI, especially in older people, it slams them into dementia.
You
I don't
nailed it.
know how old your dad was or any of his issues.
You nailed
I
it.
speak, okay, because it slams them.
Yep.
I can speak personally to that too. Somebody that was walking, talking, and able to take care of themselves had a UTI and is now in a long-term care because they can barely speak and can no longer walk and often can't feed themselves. They were slammed into late-stage dementia from a UTI. And that is a common, and this is children and older people, it's huge. They don't bounce back the way you expect them to.
Sure.
Elderly people, I mean, you don't expect them to bounce back, but children you do, and they don't. Cognitive changes can be permanent. Some can. There's another story of a child that suffered such pain his entire life. He had it as a neonate, suffered septic shock, and spent his life with what they called arthritis and pain his entire life. And at like 25, woke up one day with no pain.
Wow.
Just
interesting.
So I'd like to take some blood samples from that young man. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But you're listening to Mother's story going, well, now he's a crazy man. He wants to go skiing. He's on motorcycles and he's on, because he doesn't have pain.
That's great.
So,
good story.
He went the total other way.
Wait, and you brought up a couple things. You brought up PTSD and then also post-sepsis syndrome. You brought up both of those. So I'd love to learn a little bit more on that if possible.
Well, I want to touch on the PTSD because a lot of family, anybody who's had sepsis, or if you were to look at me and I told you I had PTSD, you would go, well, of course you do. Look at you, you wouldn't say look at you, but you know what I mean, right?
I know what you mean.
But of course you do. And if I said I had brain fog, you would go, of course you do. But PTSD doesn't just affect the patient. It also affects the family of the patient. My family, I'm a single parent, and I was totally autonomous. And that's the right word, right? I could do everything myself.
Sure.
And I took care of the house. I did everything for them, blah, blah, blah. I was a single mother. To being in a bed on life support.
Yeah.
They didn't see anything. They didn't see that coming. That wasn't on their bingo card. That came out of the blue. You're a parent. This happens to children and just as fast. And I'm going to say there's more guilt when there's younger children because you're going, I should have seen the signs. Like all of a sudden your family member is on life support. Yeah. Your dad.
Yeah. He was.
And what that does to you. It doesn't give you any preparation time.
No.
For any illness. It's sudden. It's like a car accident. I compare it to being hit by a Mack truck and the whole family being hit by that Mack truck. Because you're watching your wife die before your eyes. Yeah. And in most cases, like you read in my own story, my family was told to prepare for the worst.
Yes, I did read that. Yes.
Right? And many of us, their families were told that. And they're left hanging for a month. So what I did for a month, the year after, was I started crossing off days on the calendar. Okay, so I went in on the 22nd. My daughter was called at work. My mother was called. She was driving somewhere. My other daughter was at work. My son was sitting on a bus when he was called. And my youngest, nobody talked to him until that night because he has autism. They wanted to be face to face. And
Sure.
And nobody spoke to him until the next day because I hadn't been stabilized. But they all remember exactly where they were.
Oh, sure.
When they got this call. Out of the blue, it's a punch in the face, it's a punch in the gut. And then you're sitting there. So what I started to do the following year was crossing the days off. Do you know how long a month is?
Oh.
When you're crossing off the days like that.
It's an eternity.
And I'm thinking they had stuff planned where I had one daughter staying home, making lunches, doing stuff with the boys, taking care of the house. My other daughter made lunches, went to my mother to be at the ICU all day.
Yeah.
And they were there from 8:00 in the morning till 5:00 at night, or they did a shift. Somebody was there till, and then, the next day they started over. So imagine, I can't even imagine what they went through.
Yeah.
I, as a parent, cannot fathom. Every time I think about it, it just brings tears up to my eyes. So I don't even want to go there.
Sure.
So it decimates not only the person on the bed, but it decimates the family.
Yes.
And in my day, they didn't tell the family about PTSD. So as soon as a family member reaches out to us, I am first to tell them, you need to watch out for this and watch for it in your kids because it's a real thing. And if the hospital offers you help while you're there, because usually sometimes they'll offer while you're in hospital, they'll offer some family support. It's gone once you're out of hospital. Oh, so if you get help, if you're offered any help, take it. Whether you think you need it or not, take it.
That's great advice.
Canada. Yeah. But once you're out of the hospital, you don't get offered that help. It's private, offered, or through a support group like we're doing.
Exactly.
Where people can talk to each other and see that the memory thing is not just your dad or your wife and they're not just playing with your head. There's a lot of family members say that you look okay, but you're just not right. And you're just obstinate. And the doctors actually will tell the family members, they're just looking for attention. They're used to being the center of attention when you've been in ICU. Doctors have said that to family members.
That's terrible.
So as you can imagine, support gets pulled. Yeah. People get angry. Family members walk away from each other. Marriages break up because doctors say that. They don't recognize that the person is going through post-sepsis syndrome. And post-sepsis syndrome is a real thing. It's been researched. They're pulling out more and more. We had more and more stuff out just before sepsis hit, before COVID hit. In January 2020, I believe, the WHO, in 2017, the WHO did a whole thing on sepsis, that it was spreading, it was happening more. And you can't catch sepsis. What's happening is it's antibiotic resistance. It's stronger viruses. They're moving faster than they ever have. Wow. They're getting stronger, as we can see. Yeah. So the WHO has recognized it. So anyhow, post-sepsis syndrome is a real thing and is being recognized with COVID survivors.
Interesting. And as you were saying, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to ask you a question just because how real it is, and then people taking away some of the support they need. You obviously have started something, and that's fantastic. There's people all over that are going to be listening to it, to this. Are there organizations like, say, the Sepsis Alliance? Is there links in there where people can get help, or
there are
in
places
Canada?
All around the world right now. We are so lucky. They're starting to open up everywhere. If you do Sepsis EU, the page will come up. Australia, Sepsis has a page. Oh my gosh, and one just leaped my.
Well, you know what we can do.
Scotland, the UK Sepsis Trust. I could send you a list.
You know what? I would appreciate that. And here's why. What I'll do is I'll put that into the description, because I think it would be very important for people to have these links, because like you were saying, even as little as, I guess, at this time, 9 years ago, and I don't want to say that's a little time, because
it is.
But
in research,
it is. You're right. But in that time, especially then, there wasn't as much as there possibly is now. But you weren't able to find it according to your story in 2013.
It wasn't there. It didn't exist.
There you go.
In Canada, we had nothing. And I was part of the team that helped launch the Canadian Sepsis Foundation.
Congratulations.
And then we've got a research network too. And, but we had nothing in Canada. Sepsis Alliance was the only one that had real information on sepsis recovery. And the UK Sepsis Trust had developed some post-sepsis documentation fact sheets. And then the CDC, if you go on the CDC website, there were pages there too. I don't know if they're still there, but they were there.
Interesting.
And they were one of the first documents, document from a federal organization, we'll say, touching on post-sepsis, post-infection recovery. And it's called post-sepsis because any infection leads to sepsis. And I'm going to use meningitis to explain that, because a lot of people think meningitis means you're going to lose limbs. Meningitis is the virus. If you catch it early and it's detected and treated early, you're not necessarily going to have the limb loss.
Interesting.
That accompanies that. The sequelas of post-infection. If you look up post-polio and post-Spanish flu, because there is a post-Spanish flu syndrome, they're all post-COVID, post-sepsis. They're all post-sepsis at the worst cases, because they didn't have a vaccine for polio. So when you were recovering, if it didn't kill you as an adult, you were left with this fog and lethargy. And they did a movie on it called The Awakening or something. This is a fact. And these things happen in post-infection recovery. Somebody who had an appendix explode, I'm going to tell you that person is going septic because of the poisons that have been released in their body.
Interesting.
It doesn't mean that they're put on there are 3 levels to sepsis. There's sepsis where you probably don't even know you have it. So when you need an IV antibiotic, that's the first step. That's interesting. That's where the oral isn't doing it, and we need to put you on an IV. That's where things are starting to go wonky. Oh, you need some oxygen now? You're at the 2nd level. And that's usually where the brain starts to go. Your kidneys have gone by then. And then when you're passing out, that's your septic shock. There are 3 levels to sepsis.
Thank you for passing that on. I had no idea that. That's very important information. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that.
It is. And I've lived overseas. For everybody who thinks that they don't, I should have known that. I lived in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa. And I thought I was very well educated on infections. I knew when it does this and you have the pain and this is when you have to go in and get antibiotic. I had never heard the sepsis word. I didn't know there was 3 levels of infection. I did not know that. I did not know that when this happens, I didn't know any of that. I'm going to tell you, it's been one of the best kept secrets around the world forever, and I don't know why. All of us don't know why. People say it's because there could be malpractice attached to it. But if ER doctors are missing the symptoms, and you could be taught them in public health. I think every maternal, and you have to take an early birth maternity class. Why are they not teaching that you can go septic from a UTI when you're pregnant? Real fast, like.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And that getting the swab before delivery to make sure that you don't have a bacteria, a staph infection, or there's another one that they find often in the vaginal canal. It doesn't mean you're dirty. You get that swab because as soon as that baby comes through, the baby is exposed to it, and
Yeah.
so are you.
Yeah.
And those babies die,
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
they're not,
The education isn't there,
the education isn't there, but it should be in public health, in maternal health. Like that one just kills me, the maternal health one.
Yes.
There is no excuse for them not telling a woman
Yes.
that is pregnant that if she suspects a UTI, she really needs to look at that right away.
Well,
There's no excuse for not telling them that.
Well, thank you for sharing that today, because I didn't know that. I have a couple kids. My wife and I have a couple kids. We didn't know that. I'm sure there's people out there that needed to hear this. So thank you so much.
It just happens faster now than it used to. So being infection aware is just very important today.
Yes.
The antibiotics aren't working the way they used to. And people are losing limbs. They're losing organs.
Yeah.
They're losing their life to a simple infection. With sepsis, and I'm going to use a COVID infection, if you know the signs, what to look for, and are treated, you can walk out of the ER. You might.
Yeah.
Whereas if you don't know the signs of infection, you might walk out minus a kidney, minus a limb, with a heart complication that will never, ever go away. Myocarditis is a common injury from sepsis, but it's also a common injury from the flu.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of our flu people end up with this myocarditis injury that they don't realize they have until a week later. And then they go septic because of that injury. So it's the flu is a scary thing. You've heard of the flu. My gosh, you had the worst case of the flu. You needed a heart transplant.
Oh, wow.
Have you ever heard that?
No,
that
I have not.
The flu attacked their heart and they need a heart transplant, or it attacked their kidneys. They had sepsis, is what happened. The flu did not attack their kidneys.
Got it.
The flu triggered the body's own septic response. Sepsis is not something you catch. It's your own body's response to out of control infection.
Wow. Yeah,
so it's not something you catch.
That's good to know too. I remember learning that with my dad. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, we could both have the same flu. We could both have the same infection, you and I, that gives us pneumonia. One of us, it'll trigger a septic response. The other one is just going to get better. And nobody knows why. That's where the studying is being done right now.
Good.
Checking those T cells out to see, why are you not ending up in ICU and I am.
Wow.
Right? There's a reason.
That's great information. And it's good that the research is starting to finally happen, right?
It's happening.
Good.
Yeah.
So, in one of the things I read about you, and this is going to be like post, obviously, all the things you went through, you're starting, I saw a television program where you're starting to drive again, or maybe at this point you have started to drive again. So you mind speaking to that a little bit?
Well, that was in, I'm not sure if it was 2015 or 2016.
Oh, so that was a little while ago.
Braces.
Okay.
I got braces. And I got my driver's license again. So that was 52. It was fantastic. I have not been doing a lot of driving lately because my house does not have a covered garage.
Okay.
And I'm in Canada, and there's snow and ice, and I cannot get to a vehicle safely.
Oh, that makes sense. Yes. I didn't think of
drive.
That. Yeah.
So my next purchase of a home will have a garage on it so that I can have that independence. But I have to tell you, people are very nervous getting in a car with me. So if I am driving with a person that is licensed, often they won't let me drive.
I'm sure you do great.
I do. I mean, I get home alive, right? When I go do my thing.
And that's, part of the strategy, right?
Yeah. A lot of people, they get in that car and they are white knuckling before I'm even moving. And so it's, and you could just see it, that it's not going to be a fun car ride. So you just might as well let them drive. And a lot of people just don't want to give that up. Yeah. But I do use it during the summer.
Good.
And it is, and it's really important to my independence. I still have one kid at home, and it's important to be able to go out and do whatever you need to do.
Sure.
But like, I'm not driving like I used to.
Yeah.
And people just won't let me. They're so judgy.
Yeah, people think I can't drive a stick shift, and I can. So you do what you do. It's interesting though. So there's two things that I've learned: the driving, and I didn't know about your artistic outlet, and that is really. I can't wait to see more about that. And having you share the images with me, and we'll if there's a link, I can certainly share that on the podcast as well. So
I think I have some on my public Facebook page.
Okay.
But yeah, I just started putting some of the pictures up because people said, "My gosh, you should put some pictures up."
Oh yeah, definitely.
But, I started. I was doing some stuff in my house, and I just found paint because I used to paint, and I did a little feel sorry for myself hour, and then I thought, you know what, I'm going to try and paint this little thing here. I'm sure I could do dots, and there's an artist that does painting with dots, so I thought, I'm going to try my hand at that and try my hand. And the first ones were a little rough, but like I said, it kept me busy. And I don't know, the more I did it, the more I was waking up in the morning going, oh yeah, I'm going to work on that snowman I did today.
Absolutely.
But when I came out of the hospital, it was so depressing. And that's why painting and yoga was really, really, I've got a prosthetic yoga arm.
Very nice.
But I was doing yoga using my cupboards, my chest of drawers in my kitchen for the different levels that you need to be on yoga. I just open a cupboard door to do. And I was balancing on my knuckles, which is obviously not great. But being able to do those things when I came out of the hospital was really important, and more important even than when I was in a hospital.
Sure. Because
when you're in rehab or in a hospital, you've got all these teams and people helping you up and building you up and going, you walk, way to go. You walk to the elevator, they're going, whoa, I can barely do that for 2 feet. And, they're always just cheering you on. When you get home with teenagers, nobody's cheering you on. And they secretly expect you to be who you were before. And that's part of the PTSD and healing thing. You still expect you to be the person you were before, and they still expect you to be the person you were before, and you're not. Mm-hmm. And to try to be that person is mental torture in itself. Sure. From both sides, because people have expectations from you that you can't meet. Yeah. That create mental health issues. Yeah. When you're still trying to figure out who you are now. Yeah. When I lose a thought mid-sentence, you're making fun of me is not, you making fun of me is okay because you're an amputee.
I would never.
But anybody else, it's not, say a family member. Oh. And they don't do it. It's this weird thing. There's a lot of, there's memory loss. So somebody will say, you have an appointment, or you said this yesterday. And I'll go, I did not say that yesterday. Instead of saying, remember what the doctor said about your memory. You did have a call. We did do this. And in my family, the voices get raised and they think that yelling it at you, and I'm not just talking about my kids, sure. Yelling it at you will make you understand better that you don't remember what happened yesterday. So, and that's like speaking Chinese to somebody who doesn't speak Chinese, and yelling at them doesn't
help.
No. Yeah. And you're already feeling pretty bad at this point in your recovery.
Sure.
And these things are huge, but families don't get any coaching sessions.
Isn't that interesting?
They don't even get told about PTSD for themselves, or that sometimes it's mentioned that the patient might be. But in my case, PTSD is what the patient's going to have. Oh, there might be brain damage. So So anything that was wrong with me, family members, yeah, well, it could be that brain damage. Yeah. So how would you react if every time you had a little bit of a difference, somebody said, yeah, it's just that brain damage?
Yeah, not too well. No one would react.
Nobody
well
would,
to that.
right?
Yeah, that's part of the golden rule thing, doing to others, and maybe
Yes,
I understand where you're going.
And a lot of times when the doctors, you go in to complain about these pains you have, and not me because I don't have these pains, but a lot of the sepsis survivors, the doctors do a few little tests and they go, there's nothing wrong with you. I'm thinking that maybe I should refer you to psychiatric help. And this person is suffering chronic pain.
Yeah. Wow.
But because the doctor doesn't recognize post-infection recovery. So what's happening to a lot of our ICU patients is they're committing suicide.
Oh, that's terrible.
When they come out of ICU, and there's and that's because there's no support post ICU. If you can't find stuff that brings you joy, that doesn't involve a motorcycle, or like myself, it was yoga, and I couldn't do it, but I found a way of doing it.
Good.
Using my chest of drawers.
Sure.
But as soon as my doctor heard what I was doing, I mean, she had a cardiac. Like, she was like, yeah, you can't be doing that. You need. So she built me a helmet for this hand. And
okay.
She had a proper arm built for me. But.
Good. At least she was encouraging and wanted you to continue.
She was.
That's fantastic.
But it wasn't proactive.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, that's a great point. Yes.
And that's where the people fall off. They fall off the chart because none of this is proactive. Mm-hmm. They try and ask you what you like to do, but don't. Mm-hmm. If I said I was a water skier, they'd sort of chuckle and go, and what else? Instead of, well, we're going to work on that water skiing thing.
Yeah, let's see if we can figure out how.
Else? Because we are going to work on that water skiing thing.
Yeah.
Because it can be done. There are ways, right? Yes. I've seen it. So there are ways.
Yeah, I certainly can't speak as well, as an amputee like yourself. But for me, I do whatever I feel like. I golf, yes. I play basketball,
But even you run into people thinking that you can't do something.
Oh, all the time. Yeah.
Because you have one hand.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite lines, and I'm going to say if you haven't used it yet, you should. When somebody is, I always say, no, it's missing limbs. There's nothing wrong with the brain.
There you go. Good point. Yes.
People will sometimes make the assumption that because I'm missing some limbs, I won't understand what they're talking about.
And I learned that, and I agree with you. I got a chance to talk to Nicole Kelly, who's an amputee. She's a congenital amputee, and we're going to do a podcast around this because we talked after the podcast we recorded. But the appearance of an amputee sometimes it makes people just assume, to your point, that other parts of their being is also affected. So they just think. I remember being in corporate America many times, and people would, I'm like doing web design, but people weren't sure whether I could, not because of anything, just because of the way I appear. So I think that's an important message. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, and in the computers, the two hands, right?
Yes.
That is a big thing to adapt. I mean, you would have learned it that way. For me, it was like learning how to drive all over again. Yeah,
for you, it would be a little bit more difficult than me. I was born like this, so I just kind of, this is the way I've always been. But for you, it would be certainly a lot more difficult than me.
Well, no, it was an adapting period. Because I learned, as you did, as you were growing up, how to use a computer.
Sure.
And you adapted as you were, because you were born that way.
Yeah.
For me, all I could think of was, I need two hands. I need two hands. I need two hands. And it took like 10 months before somebody said, there are sticky keys.
Yeah, see, I didn't even know that. I use a regular keyboard, and this is pretty much spacebar, spacebar, spacebar. It's kind of as a joke. Everything else is like with my fingers, but I'm not fast, but I can get around. So
yeah, and I couldn't think of doing a control-delete, and I don't have that stretch in my palm, because I did think I could try that, but I don't have the expansion in my palm. But it took somebody 8 to 10 months before they said, well, you'll always be able to use an iPad because you don't need to do that. And then if you're on your laptop, there are sticky keys. There are
That's interesting to know.
but it took 10 months. And I'm a new amputee. So you're thinking that they got to be giving me information to make me realize that I can function.
Yes. Yeah.
You know,
Understood.
because that's one of the biggest things with a new amputee. They crash and they get into depression. Because honestly, I couldn't imagine life.
Yeah.
How am I going to live with no limbs? Now, this is embarrassing that I was actually suicidal over that, because I know a lot of quad amputees now who are living life and can do kitchen stuff and but at the time I
don't know if that's embarrassing though. I'm sorry to.
But I kind of feel bad because, especially when I do it on a live, I admit to it on a live thing, because at the time you're slammed into a world you know nothing about, right?
Yeah.
And the first thing that happens is depression.
Sure.
And to me, how could you avoid that depression is by showing people immediately there are ways, or even just telling them. And that's peer support. Having an amputee walk in and say there is life after amputation.
Yes.
My God, that changed everything for me. They had an amputee come and visit me, and she showed up in a sundress, whereas everybody's telling me to cover up, right? She shows up in a sundress. She is flashing who she is, and she's got her purse. She hauls out her iPhone. She takes my phone number. I mean, she showed me that there was life and had a real conversation with me. When an able-bodied person tells me, oh, there's stuff out there to help you, I'm going, yeah, I'll play your silly little game because I'm depressed.
Yeah.
And I'm saying to myself, there is no way you have a clue what I'm going through.
Yeah.
Even though you see this every day, there is no way. Because you can't fathom that.
No.
You can't.
No.
And one way I can describe that is the trauma of somebody losing 2 fingers.
Yeah.
Is as big as a trauma as this.
Absolutely.
Because to them, you're losing a part. You can't imagine losing any part of your body.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's where it is different for me, because I'm in a congenital, so I didn't have to go through that. So
but you would still, if you had to get rid of a foot.
Oh, I would, yes.
You would still go through that same, you would have the inside scoop that there is life.
Yeah. I know where you're going with that. No, you're exactly right. I'm just saying that in my situation currently, you're telling me things that I'm learning, and I can see it though. I can see it.
Well, you see, in a lot of I sit on the ACC, and I keep saying, we say, what do we call it? Limb awareness.
Like limb differences.
Limb awareness month.
I think there is one in October. Yeah.
There's a different word, and somebody said, why do we have to keep adding this little thing on at the end? And I said, because a congenital amputee is still an amputee, but they are not our first. We say limb loss month. Limb loss month.
Okay. Yeah.
Why limb loss month? Now we really add limb loss and limb difference awareness month, because you don't have a hand. Does that make you less part of the limb loss month activities? You wouldn't have recognized yourself in our stuff, because we were talking about a traumatic limb loss, not a limb difference.
Yeah, that's interesting. Interesting perspective.
And limb loss through a traumatic, we suffer something called phantom pain.
Yes,
that I understand that a congenital limb loss does not suffer.
Nope, not at all. Nope.
So there are differences.
Oh, there's definitely differences. That's why I think it's,
I think it's fantastic to speak, with people of all different levels.
Sure.
I have learned so much. People think that because I've lost so much that I have all the ins and I don't, and I've learned different things from different people, and it's a learning curve, and that's one of the good things.
Yes. That
came out of all of this was that I got introduced to a group of people that I would never have met because I didn't even know really that community area of the world existed,
Yes.
other than through War Amps, whom I've always been a supporter of, but never knew any amputees.
Yeah. That's interesting.
It was a world. Yeah, it was a world I didn't know existed.
Yes.
And I met some.
I was just gonna say, here you are, and again, you're. When I listen to you talk, you're like a force of nature. You're here, right here. Let's go. Let's do it. And I just admire that. And I want to thank you for being on. I've taken a lot of your time, and I apologize for that. And but I appreciate it. And your story is it's amazing. I hate to use adjectives like that, or I don't want to. I want to make sure I'm respectful in how I talk, but it just means so much to me. All the learning I did through what you have online, and then just being able to. You're speaking right now. I've learned a lot. I learned a lot from what my dad went through, and this is 5-6 years ago, and I didn't know a lot about that. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome, and I thank you for having me. And as I told you before we started talking, I tend to chatter sometimes when I start talking about these things. So
you
thank
have a passion. Well, if there's anything else you want to add as we move forward, I'd love to have you on again, because it just seems like there's so much more you could speak to. And
I'd love that. I've enjoyed chatting with you today, and the more we can get the information out there, the more lives are saved.
Absolutely.
And that is my goal, is to save some lives. So let's do it.
Let's do it. Thank you so much. Thank you for being on the podcast today. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was the We're Not Stumped podcast, hosted by Mike Boland. If you want to be a guest on the program, reach out to Mike at his email address, mike@mikeboland.com. This podcast is produced by One Hand Man Productions. If you are looking to start your podcast, go to onehandmanproductions.com.